Chosen one, stop scrolling. You think you just survived something. You call it a hard season, a confusing season, maybe even a breaking season. But what if it wasn't about survival at all? What if that entire period of your life was about formation? Because if you're honest, it wasn't just one moment, it was a stretch of time where things didn't make sense. There were days you went quiet, not because you had nothing to say, but because you realized not everything could be explained. There were moments you were misunderstood. People saw your distance and called it arrogance, saw your boundaries and called it coldness, saw your focus and thought you had changed. And maybe you had. There were times you felt left behind, watching others move ahead while your life seemed paused, doors opening for them while yours stayed closed, making you question if you had missed something or if you were simply not seen. But here is the part you didn't fully understand while you were living through it. You were not being ignored, you were being shaped. Because some of the most important work God does in your life happens where no one is watching. Not in the visible moments, not in the applause, not in the recognition, but in the quiet, in the restraint, in the discipline of continuing when nothing around you confirms that you're on the right path. You didn't just make it through that season, you were being built in ways no one could see. Built in your thinking, built in your patience, built in your ability to stay when you could have walked away, built in your ability to hold your peace when reacting would have been easier, built in your ability to trust without immediate clarity. And this is where your perspective has to shift, because many people believe God tests them to see if they will fail, but God is not uncertain about you. He is not observing from a distance, hoping you get it right. What he was doing was revealing who you were becoming under pressure. He allowed the silence so you could hear differently, the delay so you could grow differently, the misunderstanding so you could stand without needing approval. That season was not about breaking you. It was about building a version of you that could carry more without collapsing under it. Now, if you look closely, you can see the evidence. You don't react the same way anymore. You don't chase the same things. You don't need the same validation. Something in you has shifted. Something in you has stabilized. And that is the real sign. You didn't just pass. You were prepared for a level of clarity you didn't have before, prepared for a level of responsibility you haven't fully stepped into yet, prepared for a life that requires more from you internally, not just externally. So don't reduce that season to, "I made it through." Understand it for what it really was. You didn't just survive. You were being formed for something you haven't fully stepped into yet. Chosen one, if you truly understand what you just came out of, then you also need to understand this pattern. Before public impact, there is always private formation. This is not random. This is not delay without purpose. This is how God builds something that can actually last. Because what is revealed without being formed will eventually collapse under the weight of attention, responsibility, and expectation. And if you look closely at Scripture, this pattern is everywhere. Joseph was not taken from the pit straight to the palace. There was a process: betrayal, isolation, prison, waiting. Years where nothing looked like progress, yet everything was preparing him for leadership. David was anointed king long before he ever sat on a throne, yet he spent years as a shepherd, then years in hiding, fighting battles no one saw, learning how to trust God in private before leading people in public. Even Jesus, before 3 years of visible ministry that changed the world, lived 30 years in obscurity, in quiet development, in unseen obedience. So if you have felt hidden, overlooked, or like your life has been unfolding in a slower, quieter way than you expected, you need to stop interpreting that as rejection. Because in the language of God, hidden does not mean forgotten. Hidden often means protected, shaped, and prepared. And there are reasons for that. The first reason is this: hidden seasons build identity. When no one is watching you, when no one is affirming you, when there is no audience to respond to, you are forced to confront who you really are without external reinforcement. You find out what you believe when there is no one agreeing with you. You discover your discipline when no one is checking on you. You learn your values when there is no pressure to perform. Identity that is built in public is unstable because it depends on response. But identity that is built in private becomes rooted. because it is formed in truth, not in reaction. In hidden seasons, you are not becoming who people expect you to be. You are becoming who you actually are. The second reason is this. Hidden seasons remove dependency on validation. One of the most subtle traps is needing to be seen in order to feel secure, needing approval to continue, needing recognition to feel like you are on the right path. But if God allowed you to step into visibility too early, that dependency would follow you into your next season and eventually control your decisions. You would begin to adjust your voice to maintain approval. You would hesitate to act without affirmation. You would measure your worth by response instead of alignment. So God removes the noise. He allows you to move without applause, to grow without recognition, to continue without feedback. Not to punish you, but to free you. Because when you no longer need validation, you become far more stable. You can move with clarity even when no one understands you. You can stay consistent even when no one is watching. And that kind of independence is necessary if you're going to carry anything meaningful. The third reason is this. Hidden seasons align your motives. It is easy to say you are doing something for the right reasons when there is nothing to gain from it. But once visibility, influence, or opportunity enters the picture, your motives are tested in a different way. Why are you really doing this? Is it for purpose, or is it for attention? Is it for obedience, or is it for recognition? Hidden seasons give you time to refine that, to do things when there is no reward, to stay committed when there is no external benefit, to choose integrity when no one would notice if you didn't. Because what you practice in private becomes what you carry in public. And if your motives are not aligned before you are revealed, they will become exposed after. So if you look back at your life and see seasons where you were pulled back, slowed down, or placed in environments that felt smaller than what you believed you were capable of, don't rush to label those seasons incorrectly. Don't call them wasted. Don't call them unfair. And don't call them proof that you were overlooked. Because if you were hidden, it was not rejection. It was protection. And it was preparation for something that required you to be ready long before you were visible. Chosen one, this is where many people misunderstand what it really means to pass. Because most people are waiting for a visible sign, something external, something obvious, something that proves to everyone that they made it through. They expect a reward, a breakthrough, a sudden change in circumstances. But the truth is, the real evidence that you passed is not always what shows up around you. It is what has changed within you. Passing the test is not about what you achieved. It is about who you became under pressure. And if you look closely, there are signs, quiet ones but undeniable, that something in you is no longer the same. The first sign is this: you respond differently now. Situations that used to trigger, you don't carry the same power anymore. You don't react as quickly. You don't escalate as easily. There is a space now between what happens and how you respond. Before, everything felt immediate. You felt it, and you acted on it. But now there is awareness. You pause. You observe. You choose. That shift may seem small, but it is one of the strongest indicators of growth. Because self-control is not about never feeling anything. It is about not being controlled by everything you feel. And when your responses change, it means your internal foundation has changed. The second sign is this: you no longer need everyone to understand you. There was a time when being misunderstood felt heavy. You wanted to explain yourself, clarify your intentions, correct people's perceptions. You felt a need to be seen accurately in order to feel at peace. But something has shifted. Now you can hold your position without explaining every detail. You can let people have their assumptions without needing to correct them immediately. Not because you don't care, but because your peace is no longer dependent on their understanding. You have learned that not everyone is meant to see you clearly in every season. And that realization brings a different kind of freedom. Peace becomes more important than explanation. Alignment becomes more important than approval. The third sign is this: you can sit in silence without panic. Before, silence may have felt uncomfortable. You needed noise, movement, distraction, something to fill the space. Whether it was conversations, media, or constant activity. There was always something happening. But now, silence does not feel threatening in the same way. You can sit with your thoughts. You can be alone without immediately reaching for something to distract you. That does not mean everything is always easy, but it means you are no longer afraid of stillness. And that matters because growth requires space. Clarity requires quiet. If you cannot sit with yourself, you cannot hear what needs to be adjusted. The fact that you can now stay in silence without escaping it is a sign that your internal world has become more stable. The fourth sign is this: you choose alignment over emotion. This is where everything comes together, because emotions are still there. You still feel frustration, disappointment, uncertainty, even anger at times. But those feelings no longer make your decisions for you. You have learned to ask a different question, not "what do I feel right now?" but "what is right in this moment?" That shift is maturity, because emotions are temporary, but alignment has long-term consequences. And choosing alignment does not always feel comfortable in the moment. Sometimes it means staying when you want to leave. Sometimes it means being quiet when you want to speak. Sometimes it means letting go when you want to hold on. But every time you choose alignment over impulse, you reinforce the person you are becoming. And this is the part many people miss. They think passing the test means everything around them changes immediately. They expect doors to open, opportunities to appear, results to show up right away. But often, the first thing that changes is capacity. Your ability to handle more. Your ability to stay steady longer. Your ability to see clearly without reacting emotionally. That is what passing actually produces. Not instant reward, but expanded capacity. Because if nothing inside you had changed, then even if your external situation improved, you would still respond the same way. You would still carry the same patterns, the same reactions, the same limitations. And eventually, those patterns would undo what you were given. So God does something different. He increases your capacity first. He changes how you think, how you respond, how you process. He strengthens your internal structure so that when external change comes, you are able to carry it without collapsing under it. So if you are waiting for proof that you passed, look at yourself. Look at how you respond now. Look at what no longer disturbs you the same way. Look at what you no longer chase. Look at how you hold your peace in situations that once would have shaken you. Those are not small changes. Those are the signs. You didn't just pass because something around you changed. You passed because something within you did. Chosen one, this is the part no one talks about enough. Everyone focuses on the test, the pressure, the breakthrough. But very few people prepare for what happens after. Because the moment you pass is not the moment everything becomes easy. In many ways, it is the moment where a different kind of responsibility begins. Not heavier in a dramatic sense, but deeper, more subtle, more internal. And this is where many people quietly lose what they were just prepared for. Because once the pressure lifts, once clarity starts to return, once you feel more stable, there is a temptation, a subtle pull to go back to what is familiar. And if you're not aware of it, you can slowly undo the very growth you just fought for. The first mistake is this: going back to old patterns. You may not return to the exact same situations, but the mindset can come back quickly. Old reactions, old habits, old ways of thinking that feel comfortable because they are familiar. You start responding the way you used to, just a little at first. You justify it because it's not that serious. But patterns don't need to be extreme to be dangerous. Small returns become consistent behaviors, and consistent behaviors rebuild old cycles. That's why awareness matters here. Because growth is not just about reaching a new level, it's about maintaining it. The second mistake is this: seeking validation again. During the season you just came through, you learned how to move without being seen. You learned how to continue without constant affirmation. You built something stable inside you. But now, as things begin to shift, there can be a quiet desire to be recognized, to be understood, to be acknowledged for what you went through. And while that desire is human, it can also become a trap. Because the moment you begin depending on validation again, your decisions start to shift. You begin to adjust yourself to maintain approval. You hesitate when there is no feedback. You second-guess what was once clear. And slowly, your stability becomes external again instead of internal. The third mistake is this: rushing the next step. After a long season of waiting, it's natural to want movement, to finally do something, to step into what feels like progress. But rushing does not equal readiness. Just because you feel better does not mean you need to move faster. In fact, this is often the moment where slowing down becomes even more important. Because what you are stepping into next will require consistency, not just momentum. And if you move too quickly, you may carry the right intention but lack the structure to sustain it. This is the deeper truth. Just because the test is over doesn't mean you are finished growing. Growth does not stop when the pressure ends. It continues in how you maintain what was built. It continues in how you protect your peace, how you manage your attention, how you stay aligned even when things feel easier. So practically, this season requires a different approach. Move slower, not faster. Let your actions be intentional, not reactive. Protect your peace like it matters, because it does. Be careful what you allow back into your environment. Be mindful of what you give your attention to. And most importantly, stay consistent in the small things. Because stability is not built in big moments. It is maintained in daily choices. You don't need to prove anything right now. You don't need to announce anything. You don't need to rush into visibility. What you need is to stay grounded in what has already been formed in you. Because the next level doesn't require more noise. It requires more stability. Chosen one. This is where everything comes into focus. Because what you received is not just a sense of relief, not just clarity, not just a feeling that you made it through. What you carry now is weight. And that weight is not meant to overwhelm you, but it is meant to mature you. Because being blessed is often misunderstood as something light, something easy, something that only benefits you. But real blessing comes with responsibility. It comes with stewardship. It comes with awareness that what you've been given is not random, and it's not just for you. God trusts you now with things you didn't have before. He trusts you with more clarity, which means you can no longer pretend you don't see what you see. He trusts you with more awareness, which means you are more accountable for your decisions. He trusts you with influence, even if it's quiet, even if it's only in a small circle right now. Because how you live, how you respond, how you carry yourself, it affects more than just you. And this is the shift. Your life is no longer just about reacting to what happens to you. It becomes about how you show up within it. It becomes about how you hold what you've been given. Not perfectly, but intentionally. Not loudly, but consistently. So if you recognize that something in you has changed, if you can see that you don't think the same, respond the same, or carry yourself the same way anymore, acknowledge that. Not with pressure, but with awareness. Like if you recognize that you've changed in ways others may not fully see yet. Subscribe to Chosen by God if you want messages that help you stay grounded, not just motivated. And comment below, I am ready for what I was prepared for. Because this is the truth you need to carry forward. You didn't just pass the test. You became the person who can carry what comes next.